Hi everyone, so Jupiter, the planet of expansion, the gas giant himself, is starting his retrograde tomorrow, Wednesday the 9th of October, for a period of 4 months. Okay, so what does this mean? It's a retrograde, so as with all retrogrades, it is a period of introspection. And because Jupiter is the planet of expansion and growth, this is all about inner expansion and growth that is taking place during this time. We've got other planets in retrograde as well, so there is a bigger picture going on here. But when we're thinking of Jupiter, okay, Jupiter can also represent luck and fortune. And we might feel like there's not a lot of that going on because we're working through all of these lessons, the shadow aspects that have been coming up for quite a while now. Of course, we've been healing, and we might be wondering, when is our luck going to turn around? Because we're still working through these lessons, we're still working through these things. But whilst all of this is happening, that inner growth is happening as well. Now, because Jupiter is in the sign of Gemini, which is the opposite sign to that which he rules, Sagittarius, it can feel uncomfortable, because it's not the best place for Jupiter to be, of course. Jupiter wants to be in the expansive sign of Sagittarius. Think about that sort of free-spirited traveller. You know, it's all about going on a quest with Sagittarius and having those experiences and learning. Whereas in Gemini, okay, there is a bit more focus, there is a bit more, I say, rigidity when you compare the two, but there is logic and there is truth. So during this period of introspection, yes, we might be feeling like, you know, when is our luck going to turn around for us? But that inner wisdom that is coming in from the clarity of Gemini, that's offering us, if we can apply some logic in that way, is helping us expand internally, because we're becoming more aware of where we need to expand in our lives, okay? As within, so without. As above, so below. So we're aligning with that energy, but recognizing, of course, it can feel a bit uncomfortable because he is retrograding in his opposite sign. I can't mention Jupiter without mentioning Pisces, because Jupiter was the original ruler of Pisces before Neptune was discovered. So there is a spiritual element here as well. And I feel very deeply on an intuitive level that is because the inner expansion and growth that's happening also carries with it some spiritual weight. Of course, going through these lessons, going through the healing process, we are becoming more in tune with our spiritual essence within. If we are understanding what our intuition is telling us and guiding us towards, we're also growing and expanding in that way. So there is just that resonance for me on a spiritual level also. And it can be, you know, with these spiritual awakenings that are going on and the clarity that's coming in offered by Gemini that might feel a bit uncomfortable because Jupiter is almost expanding that for us in the sign of Gemini. We might just need to be a bit open-minded and look at a situation from two different angles, many different angles, a higher perspective, in order to understand what that wisdom is, what that clarity means for us. And again, that's going to provide that inner growth and expansion that we are looking for ultimately, because we want to see that reflected back to us in our external reality. We're wanting to expand and grow in the direction that we want to go, but we are having to navigate through our path, all of these challenges, the healing journey, the shadow work that I mentioned before. So this period of 4 months, okay, is obviously at a time when there is a lot going on with Saturn currently being in retrograde. And his retrograde is going to be over, you know, fairly soon. But nonetheless, he is still in the sign of Pisces. So he wants us to get into alignment with our spiritual truth. And that can also feel uncomfortable because he's bringing that structure and those boundaries that are needed to, and those rules as well, that maybe we don't want to apply or haven't wanted to apply. So we've needed to understand that. Pluto has also been in retrograde. This is deep, profound transformation. And he retrograded back into Capricorn, into Saturn's home. And I know I've mentioned this before on other astrology reports, but you know, he's gone back into Saturn's home and said, okay, Saturn, I'm going to go and clean this up once and for all. Because of course, when he moves forward then into Aquarius, he's not going to be back in Capricorn for another 250 years. So it's not going to happen again in our lifetime. So therefore, all of those Capricornian elements that we associate with our structures, our rules, our patterns, if you like, boundaries, anything that could be attributed to work or our inner authority. That's getting very much challenged under the microscope at the moment, because where do those aspects need to profoundly transform? If we're attached to a system or a structure that's not working for us, Pluto is churning it up so that we can become aware of it, so we can actually detach, okay? But this is happening on a deep, profound level. Pluto goes deep, and he's not afraid to go deep. And he's doing this in Saturn's home. So with Jupiter starting his retrograde and allowing us to go within and introspect, because it is for our highest good, it might just feel challenging for the reasons I've mentioned. We've then got Pluto coming out of retrograde on the 11th or 12th of October, so only a couple of days after, depending on where you are in the world. And he is going to then station direct in Capricorn and start moving forward. And then at some point, we'll obviously be moving out of Capricorn into Aquarius. This is the age of the Aquarius, sort of revolution, if you like, liberation as we move forward. So it can feel uncomfortable because he is at 29 degrees of Capricorn, and that is the intense degree, okay? So there's all of that going on. But if I go back to Jupiter and the actual aspects and alignments at the point that he stations retrograde, I've shared the chart on my Goddess of Neptune Instagram page. So if that resonates for you to take a look, then please do, because I've marked it up. And a couple of points I'll mention here. Jupiter at the point of stationing retrograde, he is in sextile, which is a harmonious aspect in astrology, to Chiron in Aries, and also in trine, another harmonious aspect, to Juno in Libra, and also Mercury is there as well in Libra. And of course, we're in Libra season at the moment, so there is that element of fairness, reciprocity, balance that we're trying to restore, and harmony, and so on. So those are harmonious aspects for Jupiter. But of course, there is a direct opposition between Chiron and Juno. All of those are at 21 degrees. Jupiter will be 21 degrees at the point of starting the retrograde, and both Chiron and Juno are 21 degrees of Aries and Libra respectively. So they are opposite signs. Aries represents the self. That is all about the warrior self, sovereignty, and Chiron in Aries is certainly us healing our sovereignty, moving forward in that direction of being the leader of our own life. Libra does represent fairness, balance, justice, harmony, etc. Rules the 7th house in astrology, so that's about relationships. So we need to be looking at the self versus our relationships with people, places, and things, okay? And of course we want to establish fairness, but that opposition energy is almost saying, okay, are you going to fight for yourself here, or are you going to continue to do things that other people want you to do? And this is where the growth comes into play here with Jupiter retrograde. So the inner growth and expansion, because remember, there is a sextile from Jupiter to Chiron, so that's working in harmony to say this inner growth and expansion is healing our sovereignty, and vice versa. As we are becoming more of a sovereign leader of our own life and being very cardinal fire energy that Aries is, standing up for ourselves, motivating ourselves to do what we want to do, that is also providing that growth and expansion. So it works two ways. And then when you look at the trine from Jupiter to Juno, Mercury's in the mix as well. Okay, so we must remember that communication could be at the heart of commitments and contracts, potentially soul contracts, that we're needing to resolve because we need them to become fair, balanced, harmonious, reciprocal, and that is also offering the inner growth and expansion. So understanding where communication is needed, understanding where fairness is needed is also part of that expansion. But as we expand, we also understand where fairness is not taking place and where communication is needed to resolve that. So again, it works both ways. The opposition push-pull energy is, as I've mentioned, between Chiron and Juno. So that is about, again, the self, putting the self first from a sovereign perspective, but also honouring those soul contracts and commitments with others where fairness is needed. Okay, so looking at that. There is also a grand water trine between Mars in Cancer, Venus in Scorpio, and Saturn in Pisces. So there feels to be a flow because of the water energy. Okay, and the mutable energy there is Pisces, but there feels like there's a flow to that energy because of it being a water grand trine. And we've got the masculine and feminine essence in the mix there. We've got Mars and Venus. So this is balancing out the masculine and feminine through those Saturnian lessons that we're learning. And all of that is contributing to this expansion and growth, the inner expansion and growth that Jupiter is offering us. But it might just feel uncomfortable for the reasons I've mentioned before. I believe the moon is going to be at 28 degrees of Sag as well at the time of Jupiter station in retrograde, if I remember off the top of my head. So of course that's getting into the final degrees of Sag. That's the opposite sign, of course, as we've said, but that's where Jupiter would prefer to be. So we might feel that we have those motivations within our feelings in order to enter this period of introspection from the perspective of wanting to grow and wanting to expand. You know, we're wanting to understand why certain things have had to play out, why we've had to go through certain experiences, and how our healing journey has made us wiser. You know, that's where the luck and fortune is, through that growth journey. So we need to understand it starts with us, but balancing the masculine and feminine is all part of those Saturnian lessons, of course, that have been taking place. We need to have that element of nurturing ourselves, coming from a place of unconditional love and the creative side of us with the feminine, but we also need to understand where we need to take action with the masculine energy, okay? So it's balancing those out, and these lessons of Saturn, if it's resonating for you at all, has been teaching us that as well, okay? But remember, yes, we're in Libra season, so we need to come from a place of fairness, of what we want to establish as being fair, and ultimately, you know, to have that harmony in our reality as we're going through all of this. Remembering, of course, that with Pluto due to be stationing direct very, very shortly, this is all about what have we understood from what Pluto has been showing us, you know, what needs to profoundly transform from a structural perspective when it comes to our own lives. And, you know, where have we been maybe giving our power away? Where do we need to take that back? This is profound transformation that's been going on. So that also feeds into the Jupiter retrograde of that inner growth and expansion for the reasons I've said. You know, if we're expanding and evolving because we're learning the lessons and we know where we need to profoundly transform, of course we're going to come through it and expand and grow into a different reality, but into that new reality of who we truly are. Okay, and that can be uncomfortable if we've always put others first, or we've not really looked at what we want in our lives. So yes, that's why it can feel uncomfortable, because it's kind of under the spotlight at the moment, and the eclipse period that we've recently had has possibly illuminated a lot to many people in the collective as well. So if you're sensitive to energy, you might be picking up on that also. So I'll leave it there, and as I say, if you want to dive into the chart in a bit more detail, then check out the post on my Goddess of Neptune Instagram page. And yeah, I wish you all the best for this Jupiter retrograde. Happy introspection, and embrace the inner expansion and growth that this can bring you, but understand that this might come through some truth with that Gemini energy, the need for you to be a bit more open-minded as to how things might be unfolding with that Gemini energy, and pushing through any discomfort of Jupiter being in his opposite sign, because that truth is what's going to allow for that expansion. Okay, sending you all the best, take care, and I'll see you soon.